Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about my bass because the bass itself is your tool. That's the thing you're working on. If you fine-tune it to you and fine-tune yourself to it, there becomes kind of a oneness to it where you can really get results out of what you're doing with your hands on your instrument. Adjusting your action, intonation, pickups, volume, the way the neck is, the way the frets are, all that stuff. Through the years, I fine-tuned and fine-tuned and fine-tuned and fine-tuned, and got up to a point where the bass really cooperates with me, where when I give it something, I get something back. Fighting an instrument, if you're fighting against it, if it's hard to play, difficult to play, that isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes that push that you have to give into it to get something out is a good thing. And if it's too easy to play and too clickety-clacky and too much string slapping around there because they're not tight or they're too low, that can be a bad thing too. So there is a spot you will find in adjusting your instrument to you that will be the ideal thing. I always try to get a little bit of, when I adjust my action, get a little bit of grind out of the string. There's a little bit of a little touch of the fret sometimes, and you should let the thing grind. Or you can also get a super clean tone out of it as well. And that's all adjusted down here at your bridge. I would suggest getting a book on how to set up the instrument and know how to do intonation, how to do string height adjustment. Because if you want to get into advanced techniques and advanced playing, you're going to have to get the bass to really start cooperating with you. And if you're fighting it, it's fighting you. That's one little obstacle you can get over. You don't need to have happen there that will be in your way to achieving what you want to achieve as a player. So I learned as much as I could about bass, and I can do everything on the bass other than an actual refret, where you're actually taking the frets off and putting new frets back on again. I do fret leveling, because you find as you want the action a little bit lower to do some more difficult and complex stuff, you start to get some string buzz. Well, there's a way you can level those frets off so they don't buzz. You can get the action nice and low without a lot of buzz. Get the intonation right so that it's in tune all over the instrument. It's going to change and vary with weather. This bass has been pretty beat up. I've had it on tour recently. I know the intonation is not right, so it's a bit out of tune here and there. Tuning is an art, not a science, that's for sure. Do the intonation right, do the pickup height adjustment, all those things. For me, my pickups are pretty close. They're also covered with epoxy about this thick, so they're actually farther, the pole pieces are farther away than they may seem. So when they're too close, you start to get a little odd magnetic kind of a vibrato there. Also, if they're too far away, you can lose a lot of volume. As a little experiment, you get that little screw that adjusts your pickup height. If you can move it so the pickup can be seen visibly to move, try playing a note and then moving it up and down. It's just like turning a volume control up and down. It's amazing how much more volume you can get out of your bass by moving the pickups closer to the string. Just a little bit and you'll get quite a bit more. And that's there you hit your amp harder, more response electronically to the bass later on down the signal chain. That's super important. You notice I have a double output on mine. This pickup has a volume control and an output. That's what I basically use for our purposes here today. I'm just going direct. There's no amp. There's just basically a little pedal thingy, a little pedal compressor, and nothing else, because we're just trying to illustrate a couple notes here. We're not really, this isn't really a band. That's not a band tone that I use in a rock band, loud and a lot of deep low end. When I'm playing with a band, I also play out of this pickup. I won't pull it out here because the engineers will go crazy when we make the sound. But the neck position pickup has a lot of super deep low end. That goes out of here into its own separate amplifier. So there's a dual amplifier, one for each pickup. There's volume and tone for that. Some guys like a pickup down here and a jazz position pickup, a little more brighter. I prefer these two just because that's my personal taste. Wouldn't be difficult to route one out and put one in here if you needed to. The dual output is a big help. Not completely necessary. Amazing records and incredible shows and tours have been done with a single pickup or less somehow. So it's not a necessary thing. But through the years, I've kind of fine-tuned this bass into what works for me. The neck is modeled after a 1968 Telecaster bass neck. The body's similar to my old P bass that I had when I was a young kid. And but of course a lot of improvements from Yamaha here. I have some scalloped frets here where there's a little cutout in between the fret. The wood is removed so you can get a little bit of, get way under there if you want to do a really high bend. The last 5 frets are smaller fret wires, so it's a little more accurate up here. So all these little things I've done over the years, that are built into this bass, and it becomes kind of one with me. I see a lot of players sometimes, they're up on stage with one bass, and the next day they got a different one, and they switch basses in between songs, and it would drive me crazy. I usually go out with one bass, play it the whole tour, rarely if I ever switch, ever, and it becomes really fine-tuned to me and myself to it. So when anything is going wrong or anything isn't quite right or whatever, I know it ain't the bass. I know it ain't the amp, because that's been all set up and it's tweaked out, so it's got to be right here. Got to be in my hands. So it helps you to troubleshoot if you keep some sameness down the signal chain down the line from you to the audience's ears. So I try to keep that consistent. So that's just a little bit of the bass philosophy that I go by for my instrument, and this just happens to be what I use. It isn't. It's probably not right for everybody. Could be right for some. But the principles are the same for everyone. To really fine-tune an instrument into you, if you really intimately know it and it's a part of you, is, I think, a very, very important part of becoming an advanced player. Most players that I know, they know they're great players. They know their instrument inside and out. They usually play the same one for a long time too. Jocko's old bass, Ed Van Halen's Stripe-a-Lee guitar that he played in his early years. A lot of those instruments stick with the artist for a long time. So keep that in mind when you're trying to move up to another level of playing. That may be a factor that could be of some help.